because then we'll be able to rate each one of these stories.
What episode is this, Matt?
6.
You're paying attention. Is it 6?
I think so.
Episode number 6, we were just told. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. I'm Bill Ulivieri, owner of Senecal Capital Management. We're a state-registered investment advisory firm. We manage individual retirement accounts, 401ks, and also, as of December 2018, in Illinois licensed insurance producer, which means we can offer long-term care, annuities, and such for a holistic part of a investment portfolio. Charmaine.
Charmaine Conaghan. I own Always Best Care Senior Services. We are a caregiving agency, and we also help people figure out where their next home should be if they want to move to a senior community. We're located here in Glenview. I'm a Glenview resident, and yeah, that's what I do.
Cool.
Matt.
Matt Berrafato. My company is Elephant Incorporated, and I am the Elephant Hunter. I'm a speaker and an author and a life coach, and my goal is to help people find their purpose in life. I have a new book that's coming out called Purpose or Passion, Which Comes First? And it's a question I think many people need to ponder. Today I think we're talking about, what I like to talk about is the final third of your life. Are you in the final third, or are you approaching the final third of your life? Well, no one can predict when you're going to die, and I know that. But if you take the look at the oldest living relative in your family, divide their age by 3. In my case, it's my dad. He's 90, divided by 3. I know when I'm 60 years old, I am in the final third of my life if I live as long as he is today. There are certain things that happen to us when you're in your final third or approaching final third. We're trying to give information, give value to you. We want to hear back from you. So at the end, we're going to give you our email addresses and or how we'd like you to contact us.
Like and share on Facebook?
Oh, yes.
Like and share, yeah.
Absolutely. So we know. We think this episode we want to talk about something that I think is so important on understanding. We live in a free enterprise world that we live in called the United States of America, and this system is a beautiful thing. Do we have choices in everything? And we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare, because we think healthcare is one of the first questions you need to probably ask the healthcare provider. Do I have choices?
Yes.
And we all know that if it's really free enterprise, you do. And that's what's not good about monopolies. That's not what's good about a lot of different things that are against this. But I know in the world that I work in with business owners, many times I try to advise people about if you go to the doctor and the doctor says you need an MRI, okay, where should I go get the MRI? That's a question most people don't ask, or they may ask where. No, but do you know that you can get an MRI that starts at $3,500, and you can get one that could be as low as $450, and if you want to pay cash, it's probably going to be $375. My point is, if you're paying the bill, you're going to ask the question.
So how do you?
I was just going to say we're little lambs when it comes to health care.
Yeah. I mean,
I
think
just go where they tell us to go.
I come from a very compliant.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Why is that?
It's the way my parents raised me. Like, like my dad used to say, if you get pulled over by a policeman and he beats the tar out of you, I'm on the side of the policeman. When we were growing up, I mean, we would go to parent-teacher conferences, and if my kids were acting up, we would be on the side of the teacher saying, just what were you doing? You're grounded. You have to listen to the teacher. Right. Now it seems like maybe the roles are a little bit reversed, where I don't know, like everybody seems to be upset at law enforcement agents and teachers, but I know that when I walked into the hospital with my dad and my mom, I was very intimidated. I felt like they were the experts, like I had to do what they said because I didn't know any better. And so when we were talking about like what kind of choices do we have, how do we even get the guts and the fortitude to just say, do I have a choice in this?
Because knowledge is power. You need to know when you do have a choice.
Right. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about preferred vendor lists. We're going to talk about it a little bit from your healthcare side, what a preferred vendor list means in my world, and then Matt, how that might affect you. So Charmaine, why don't you go first?
So when you go into the hospital, you need to understand what your rights are. You need to understand, especially if you are on Medicare. You need to understand, and we touched on this last episode, I don't know if you saw that, but we talked about if you're observation or you're inpatient, and if you are observation, the level of reimbursement is different.
Right. Is that a status they put you on?
Mm-hmm. They decide in the ER. Yes, they decide in the ER if you're observation or you're inpatient.
Okay.
If you're put in a hospital room and you have a nurse assigned to you and you're brought meals, that means you're inpatient, right?
No,
not necessarily. It looks and feels exactly the same. Okay? So if you're inpatient and you stay 3 midnights in that hospital and you've lost your strength or you have a broken bone or whatever your issue is, if you need to receive full-time physical therapy in a rehabilitation center, you can go to rehab paid for by Medicare for the first, 100% for the first 20 days, as a matter of fact. But you have to be in the hospital inpatient for 3 midnights.
3 midnights.
And the other thing that you need to understand that you have a choice about is you have a choice of where you're going. There are wonderful rehab centers around here, and some are better than others.
Right.
You have a choice which one you want to go to.
Right.
You have, depending on how much room they have. Sometimes they don't always have a bed, but people ask me all the time, where should I go? There are differences. You have a choice in what home health agency. When you are discharged home, either from the hospital or from rehab, you are entitled to receive, if you're homebound, if you meet homebound status, meaning it's hard for you to get to a doctor, hard for you to get to physical therapist, you can receive services in your home by a home health agency. Well, sometimes some of the hospitals around here who shall remain nameless, just tell you that you're going to get home health services, or maybe they might tell you that you're going to get home health services from this place, and it might be the agency that the hospital owns, right?
So you're saying that there's a potential fiduciary infringement because the places they're suggesting you attend are actually owned by the hospital.
Right.
And again, I don't want to make any enemies here.
And they're not breaking the law. They're just telling you, but you need to know you have a choice. That's what you're saying.
But
we want to tear the curtain. We want to pull the veil back on.
They are
on
required
this.
to tell you of a choice.
Okay.
And also if you need hospice services and you have a terminal illness and you need to receive hospice. Hospice is another topic I'd love to talk about. It's a wonderful. It is one thing that Medicare gets really, really right.
Right.
But you have a choice on who your hospice provider can be. And oh my goodness, so many people, especially when they're that vulnerable and they're getting that news. Talk about being a lamb. I mean, you're just going to sign here. Where do I sign?
Right.
It's a big enough decision to accept to go on a hospice. Much
So
less.
when you say knowledge is power, I totally agree. And this is where I think when in the world of health insurance, and that's where I spend a lot of my time with helping employers through this, and then also helping individuals with this decision or with this conversation. And the thing is that here's the way it goes. If you are paying for it, you're going to ask questions. I don't really care what anybody says. If it's on your dime,
right,
you're going to ask the question, can I buy it somewhere else cheaper?
Right.
And get as good a quality.
Is that a question? Can you actually ask that question when you're being discharged?
Absolutely.
You can tell the discharged nurse or patient, hey.
Absolutely. I'm going to pay. This is coming out of my pocket.
Right.
If it is or is not, you say this is coming out of my pocket. I want to know what the choices are.
Right.
What are they, and where can I go? Because you know what, if they don't tell you, then fine. I'm going to go on the internet in my car and look them all up. But my point is saying this.
Depends on what you're looking for, though, because price isn't always.
I understand, but my point is, if you're paying for it, and someone else is not, you're going to go look for it.
Right.
I think that's where we say being led by and being a lamb was led. I think in the healthcare field is one of the only that I know in our entire economy where people really are not shopping. They should be shopping,
right?
Because you can still shop quality, and the kind of caregiver or not caregiver, but just a provider, medical provider, is someone that is aware that I'm that valuable to that person. I'm gonna challenge some. Maybe I'm bold enough because of the insurance world. I'm gonna ask the doctor, say, Doc, I would like to have another opinion. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people are afraid. So, that's the doctor. I can't tell you. No, you can't say that, especially if they're telling you something.
And a good doctor doesn't mind that.
Of course not.
So, quick question, Charmaine. So, when the hospital, upon discharge, gives me a list of preferred vendors, and maybe there's an agency on there that's not owned by the hospital umbrella corporation, does the hospital receive a kickback?
Oh no, that's against law. No, they cannot get a kickback.
Well, there's a lot of, murder's against the law, but we have trouble with that in Chicago. So the fact that it's against the law doesn't.
I hope they don't get a kickback.
Okay.
But we don't. Yeah.
Well, in my world, preferred vendor list.
Like I can't pay someone to put me on that list.
I'm just asking the question.
I just ask really nicely.
Because in the world of investment advising, we have something called a 12B1 fee, or a preferred vendor reimbursement. So say, for example, again, I don't want to name any names, but you walk into an investment advisor office and they show you a list of mutual funds. They show you a list of preferred vendors of who we think would be a good composition for your retirement portfolio. But the truth is, and it's under disclosure, but you have to dig deep to find it, the people that they offer, the mutual fund companies, pay the office a kickback for the suggestion, for the referral that you buy their mutual funds, which is one reason I hate mutual funds, because there's always this backdoor.
That's dirty.
It might be dirty, but it's the way business is done, and it's, as long as it's disclosed, the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA say that it's okay. So that part of being an accredited investment fiduciary, which is a designation. I hope that's nobody.
There's an ambulance going by on Waukegan Road here.
Okay. So part of our.
They know their rights.
Part of our designation is that we, are aware and disclose and try to find those fees. Is it right? No. Is it being done on a daily basis? Absolutely.
Right.
Because that's the world that we operate in.
It used to be done in healthcare. Pharmaceutical reps used to just buy trips for doctors, right? So because the pharmaceutical industry really abused that, you really can't.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons we use exchange
traded funds. I could drop off pens, perhaps.
But Bill, you can also go. You can actually ask them. So who's paying? It's on our shoulders to be able to ask the question as well.
Right.
So the thing, what I'm saying is that if there's something that is not being disclosed, but it's in there, and they're legitimately, they can't be sued because they've done that. But then if I'm an investor, I can say, hey, Bill, are you getting paid by that fund extra? They have to tell them. If they don't want to, you don't want to tell me, I'm not going to go with you.
Right. You should ask that question, and you have to ask it more than once.
Absolutely.
Because, a few years ago, the SEC wanted to put it, and the Department of Labor wanted to put in this fiduciary rule, which meant that if you were a stockbroker or an investment advisor, you are held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest almost in the law as we know it. And sometimes when you use a word so often, it loses its meaning. And so you would go to a stockbroker and you'd ask him, are you a fiduciary? And he would say, well, yes, of course. But he really isn't a fiduciary, because you have to ask, how are you getting paid?
Right.
If 100% of your compensation is paid for by your investment services, then I would consider you a fiduciary. But if there's a kickback fee behind the door, if there's a commission that's maybe not so transparent, then no, you have to ask. You just have to be aware of it. I'm not saying it's always bad. I'm just saying you should know whether it's a fee only or a fee-based investment advisor.
A fair question to me, if I'm being paid an insurance commission, is how much are you getting paid a commission?
Right.
That's a fair question. And why wouldn't you want to give that?
Right.
Unless you're afraid because it's so high that they're going to go, oh my God, I'm going to do that? Yeah. Right. And that's why I don't use a company that is rape and pillaging. I don't mean to say about that, but it is.
Right.
If they're actually paying 150 points and 150% higher than what you're paying in premium, well, the insurance company's paying that, and that's not probably good for you, the buyer.
And that's one of the things that I had such a problem with annuities and insurance products my entire career. I hated them with a passion. I never felt that an annuity was really an investment. Annuities are insurance. But now, age 59, entering my final third, and yes, insurance commissions to agents have shrunk dramatically. So it's almost to the point where it's not so bad. I mean, actually, the value that they're offering in some insurance products, from my perspective, as someone who hated them my whole life, I'm like, you know what?
Right.
That's a pretty good value.
Absolutely.
And it's a conversation to be had, but at least know.
And that's why I brought up, because I wasn't talking about annuities or life insurance or other products. I was talking about health insurance.
Health insurance.
Health insurance is the same thing, that as far as if I'm a broker. If I'm a broker and I'm providing you a service, it's a legitimate question to say, I want you to know how I get paid, so I want you to know that I need to get paid so I can be here next year.
Right.
And if you think it's a lot, let me show you what it really is, because on the small companies they've really cut it down.
Yeah.
But a lot of brokers are not, and it's buyer beware. I think
beware.
to a degree that lamb kind of a thing is, we've been sort of brainwashed that doctors are always right.
Yes.
They're not always right.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I would not want to be a doctor, only because of how dangerous it is to all the things that are changing and what they were trying to navigate.
We had an incident where we took my dad on Christmas Eve 2 years ago to an immediate immediate care center because his leg was acting up and it looked like he had pulled a muscle or tore a tendon. So we spent a couple of hours at the immediate care center, again, not to be named, and the center sent him home with a leg brace because he was favoring one leg over the other. Well, guess what? He had had a stroke, and they didn't catch it for about 3 days afterwards.
See?
And so it wasn't until the leg brace wasn't doing anything, and he kind of was, you could see like he was almost getting an electric shock on one side of his face. That's when we made a decision. Okay, Dad, you do not have a bad leg. We need to take you to the emergency room right now. And he was diagnosed. They did the CAT scan, MRI. They found you could see it on the X-ray that he had had a very mild stroke, and that was causing his leg issue. It wasn't that he needed a leg brace. So you got to ask questions, and doctors are human. They make mistakes.
That's right. And so our world of when you're in the final. I mean, again, what can you do to prevent this? Arm yourself with knowledge. It's so easy today to arm yourself with knowledge.
So what 3 questions, Charmaine, would you absolutely not walk? You would not leave the hospital room. You would not be discharged until you ask these 2 or 3 questions. What do you think those would be?
Putting me on the spot.
Yes, the hot seat.
What's my status?
Okay.
As far as Medicare status,
right. What's my status in the hospital? My inpatient, my observation.
Okay.
What if I'm a Medicare recipient? What services am I entitled to, and do I have a choice? Of who's providing those services? Also, a lot of people think that caregiving is covered by Medicare, and sadly, it isn't unless you're a Medicare Advantage holder, which most people around here do not have a Medicare Advantage plan. It's kind of like an HMO, and they're going to start offering home care as a benefit supposedly this year, but it's not really organized very well, so I don't know how that's going to happen.
So are you saying that Medicare Advantage is a good thing for people to have in this area but don't currently have access to it?
I would not recommend it necessarily. There are intricacies about it that I would have to be able to explain
for another show.
Any individual. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have a choice. It's an HMO. Do you have a choice of your doctor? You might not be able to go to your doctor. And you are limited to 31 days of service, 4 hours a day. So there is a limit to it, even if you're a Medicare Advantage. But other than that, it is a private pay situation. So a lot of people so Medicare covers this, right? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Even if the doctor, the discharge planner is recommending home care,
there's
it's still private pay.
There's a lot of myths.
And I will tell you that price does not, the bottom line, if you can afford to have care, bottom line should not be your deciding factor. You need to look at a lot of other things before you
get what you pay for one way or another.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. And I think from the investment advisory side, to ask your advisor, how are you getting paid? Am I paying you, are you getting paid by commission, or are you fee-only advisor? Which means only one revenue stream, and that comes from the client, which then, in most cases, will always put the investment advisor on the same side of the table as their client, because he only wants that account to do well. He's not being commissioned by selling a product. And I also think, when you bring your statements into an investment advisor, ask them, how much do you think I'm paying holistically for the entire portfolio? Because again, I find that people who are retired hold on to way too much cash just in case of an emergency, and that money is losing 2 or 3% a year because of inflation. So that money you're just sitting aside in the money market fund for just in case is costing you potentially thousands of dollars a year. Ask the questions, how are you getting paid? Are you a fiduciary? And what is the cost of asset management?
Perfect. Awesome.
I would also add, for myself, we are private pay, but we also, people can claim benefits for their long-term care insurance for caregiving. So,
claim their benefits as a tax deduction? Claim their benefits
to pay for it.
Oh, to pay for it.
They can
use their policy to pay for that.
Correct.
Sure. All right, until next time, I'm Bill Ulivieri, Senecal Capital Management, 847-686-4800, or you can send me an email at info@senecalcapital.com.
Charmaine Conaghan, Always Best Care Senior Services. Our website is seniorcarenorthshore.com. There you can find my email address. It's too long to spell out. My number is 847-730-5930.
And I'm Matt the Elephant Hunter. You can reach me at matt@elephanthunting.net, and we really want to hear from you, so shoot us a line and we'll stay connected. Thank you again.
Thank you.